Around there. Now, we're on, I guess. Right. Okay. So, hello, everybody. I'm sorry we got a late start here, but it's all John's fault. So what can I say? Uh, no, John Riley and I have known each other for quite a while. Back in New York through many iterations or epochs of stuff. And I'm really happy that we'll be able to hang here and talk and mess around on the drums. So, uh, John, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Nice to see you. I'm glad we got the technical glitches worked out.
Yeah, we're just kind of getting all this happening, and so appreciate you guys hanging out with us. And we will rebroadcast this. We're not rebroadcast; it'll be available to look at also on YouTube and Facebook. So, and also we're going to get it on Instagram eventually. But so it'll all be written down for posterity, or anyway, video. So yeah, so I have a couple of questions. I just want to kind of get into it and see what's happening. Basically, I think, from the standpoint of like a young musician who sort of wants to get into playing music, to at more at a professional level, or for older people who want to just improve their drumming. So that's kind of what I was thinking we would get into. And first of all, I wanted to ask, uh, when did you know that you wanted to be a professional drummer, John?
I guess when I was in my middle teens, um, I'd been playing in some rock bands like from the time I was 14, 15 years old with older musicians actually. And my father really wanted me to become a doctor or a lawyer or something
There you
like
go.
that.
Mine too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I I thought, well, if I'm not going to be a musician, maybe I'll be a veterinarian. But in any event, I convinced him to let me study music in college.
Okay.
And so that was sort of a turning point. Um, he had a funny thought, though, he thought if I was a failure as a musician,
Yeah.
that having a degree in classical percussion would have more value in the real world than having a degree in jazz. So he pushed me to
Wow.
become a classical percussion major in school.
Mm-hmm.
But after 2 years, I switched my major to jazz, and I went to
Okay.
school at North Texas.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's such. I hear it's such a great school. Um,
Well, it's a
okay.
huge school.
Yeah.
There were
So,
like 150 drummers there when I was there.
oh God help us. Yeah. There's something like that at Berkeley too. I also teach. I can't believe that many. It was like it was over 100, and I was like, holy crow, who are these people? But that's a good
Oh,
point right there. How are we all going to make a living? Where are these guys going to go? And these women now, women are sort of really coming on strong. Um, okay, so supposing somebody comes to you and says, well, hey, I want to become a professional musician. I want to play jazz. What would you tell them to do? What would you advise them to do?
well, I would give them the advice that many people gave me and that I've heard said many times that if you think you have another option, do that. If music is the thing that you love uh, more than anything else, and you can't see yourself being happy without it, then go for it. But if you're
Mm-hmm.
on the fence, life as a musician. I mean, I feel like I've had a very uh, I've had the benefit of a lot of good opportunities in my life, but the career of a musician can be tough. And if you're playing gigs that aren't thrilling you and you're making low money, that's pretty depressing. If you're playing
Yeah.
gigs that you love and you're making low money, that's another story. But
Right.
so you have to, I think, to be successful, you have to be on a mission to do this thing, whether anybody supports you or not. It just has to be the
Right.
thing that you have to do.
That's great. That's great advice. Yeah. I mean, really, uh, you have to be all out. You know, you have to have a dream, and you have to say, I don't care, what people think. Or this you may get support, you may not get support, but if that's what you really want to do, that's what's going to make you happy. Then, I mean, I've seen people that you know have wanted to do that, but then they've sort of veered off the path and gone to make some more money, and then they want to come back and they want to learn music. It's like that was their passion, and it's sort of too bad that they didn't follow it. Um, so when well, let's just say this myself, that's a little loud in my ears. That's better. Yeah, thanks. We're doing a little mixing on the spot here. Um, when I grew up in sort of early, my brother brought home "Ain't That a Shame" by Fats Domino. And I think I played that a zillion times, and I didn't know at the time Earl Palmer was on drums, but that just got me. And then I got a little practice pad and started working on that, and then I got into a doo-wop band basically, and I went through high school, got into bands, and then I went to college, and that was the most fun I ever had was playing, and I was just passionate about it. So when I got the chance, then I started studying with people, and I went to New York, and first of all, I studied with Jim Strasberg, who I think you probably remember. I haven't seen him in a long time. He's kind of faded out, but he played with Sly Stone, and we were roommates out here in California for a while. But then I went in to study with Sonny Igo. I studied with Henry Adler. I studied with Bernard Purdy, which was an amazing experience. Um, and then I took about 4 lessons with Philly Joe Jones, which was really cool. Picked up a few things here and there, and kind of that's how I did it. What did you who did you study with, John?
Well,
Or
my
you went to
first,
college? You did it in college. That's part of it. But anyway, go ahead.
my, I, when I was a kid, I got a snare drum for Christmas,
Yeah.
and I used to play just that snare drum along with a radio.
Uh huh.
And I guess I was making a lot of racket, and my parents thought, well, if he's going to keep doing that, maybe he should take some lessons, so it sounds a little better. And so, from I guess the age 9 until 15, I studied with a fellow named Tom Secola, who at the time when I began studying with him, he was 19 years old, and he was a student at the Manhattan School of Music.
Uh huh.
And one of his classmates was Steve Gadd.
Oh, far out.
That was a, but I didn't. Nobody knew who Steve Gadd was when he was a freshman in college.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
and then it got to the point where my teacher Tom said, I think I've taken you about as far as I can. You should maybe look for another teacher.
Hmm.
And I took lessons from a couple of guys, and some of them I didn't really connect with. It turns
Hmm.
out one of the guys I took a lesson with, who sort of frightened me with his sternness, was Billy Cobham.
No
I took
kidding. Wow.
2 lessons from him when I was about 15 or 16, and
Wow.
we just played on Remo pads. And
Hmm.
he was so um, insistent on a certain kind of precision
Yeah.
that
Excuse me to interrupting. I had a student who went through Berkeley and did my school of funk as well, and he just recently took a lesson from Billy Cobham. Uh, Billy's in Switzerland. They did it, online and everything, and he said the exact same thing that he put like a little quarter in the middle of the snare drum, and said you have to hit that every time. It was exactly what you're saying, and I don't know. He got through it. I don't know if he was wild about it, but I guess he learned some stuff. But okay, that was just
I think there's a lot of value, and Billy is certainly
amazing. Yeah,
a consummate professional and an inspiring person. I just wasn't ready for that focus on that specific thing at that time.
yeah.
So
What
then
what books did, what books did you use before you wrote your own books? And I wanted to, of course, mention
well, I
th-
used a lot of books, but
this is if you haven't seen John's opus here, which is a total classic uh, that I use with my students. It's a great book, and I just want to mention not only is it a great book as far as the exercises, and he really gives credit to all the great drummers, Max Roach, and in the back there's like a perfect discography of what you should be listening to. Roy Haynes, Philly Joe Jones, and he has the actual records to go to. So it's really a treasure of stuff. And then he's got Beyond Bop Drumming, which is even further beyond bop drumming, and that's another great one too. And again, lots of examples in the back of stuff to check out. So anyway, what books did you get into when you were starting out?
Well, before I do that, let me tell you a funny story. You just showed that picture of Max Roach in
Yeah.
The Art of Bop Drumming, and I gave Roy Haynes a copy of the book, and he folds through the pages, and he comes to that page, and he looks at it, and he says, "You know what? I still have that suit. That was the suit that Charlie Parker made his sidemen buy." And he said, Charlie Parker told him, "You have to go to a particular tailor and have this suit made." And Roy said, "I still have the Charlie
Wow,
Parker uniform suit, which was the one that Max was wearing in that picture."
that's crazy, man. Wow, I didn't know they were into wardrobe back then. But wow, amazing.
Yeah. The early books, I
Yeah,
worked
just
on
list
some.
them off. So we got other stuff to get into, but I thought that'd be interesting for people who are trying to get into it.
Well, my first teacher had me working on snare drum stuff, the
Yeah, okay.
Haskell Haar books, and
I
there was
worked
a
on that
book.
with Bernard Purdy. This conversation is gonna go off here and there, but when I studied with Bernard Purdy, that's the book he gave me. I was in his studio up on Columbus Circle, and put me upstairs, and he gave me that book, and he said, "Play the book, but don't play the book. I mean, don't play the beats that are written there. Play some kind of rock thing, but follow the chart and use the dynamics and the stops, and learn how to read music that way. And then he'd go downstairs and talk to people and blah blah blah. And then about half an hour later he'd come up and he'd say, "Well, what did you do?" So then I'd play a little bit for him, and that's how. But anyway, he took me on recording sessions, which was unbelievable. That's another story. But okay, so Haskell Har, that red book, right?
Yeah, the Red Book, and there was a book by Gene Krupa and Cozy Cole, I think, that I worked through, and those were like snare drum reading books.
Ah, okay,
And then the Chapin book, and there was a
right.
book by Sam Ulano. I think it was called Bass Bops. It was sort
Uh-huh.
of snare drum and bass drum comping against a swing
Uh-huh.
cymbal
Cool.
beat.
Yeah.
Um, you made me think about the first time I played a song with a band.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And, my teacher had taught me, I was listening a lot to Ringo, and my
Uh-huh.
teacher had taught me the rock beat a certain way. Do do bap bap do bap do do bap bap do bap.
Right.
And but the first song I played with a band was this Cream song, "Sunshine of Your Love,"
Yeah.
and I played that beat, and the guitar player said, "No, you're playing it wrong." And I said, "What do you mean I'm playing it wrong?" Well, actually, on that record, Ginger Baker plays the snare drum on 1 and 3 instead of on 2 and 4.
Oh, yeah. Right.
He plays the eighth notes on the floor tom, and he
Yeah.
plays the snare drum on 1 and 3. So it's like be-da-da-da-ch, boop 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 be-da, a wanna da bop boop
Yeah.
boop
Yeah.
boop
Yeah.
boop. But I
Play
hadn't
that. Play
heard
that for us on the drum set. Just see if we can get that
the,
happening where we play a little bit.
the
Not that.
sunshine of your love beat.
Yeah. Why not? We'll play some crazy stuff. Who knows, man?
Let
I
me
don't
change.
quite understand what that. It's like the Indian beat.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, instead of
Okay. Right. Ah.
so it's like
Yeah.
backwards
So
rocking.
that's it. That's Ginger Baker, all right, man. Like he was a crazy dude. I mean, I interviewed him once, and other. I interviewed the whole Cream at one time, and that was far out. And Ginger Baker was
Wow.
like, anyway, I don't want to get into any negative stuff.
Uh,
He was amazing. Let's put it that way. And he had a lot of drums, and the drum companies must really love him. But he's been through a lot, and he's played a lot, and those guys were amazing.
Yeah, but
So,
I think the thing that I realized was, well, I don't know if I should say this as an author, but you can learn things from books,
yeah,
but you really need to refer to the recordings to see
yeah,
how the stuff goes and to get
yeah,
the feeling and the flow of the music. The books are
yeah.
great for information, and then you want to confirm that information by
Good
listening
point.
to
Very good
the
point.
main guys.
I mean, that's what I started out in a rock band, and I had the day I got my drums, we opened up the drums and started playing with the band, you know. So I didn't know diddly, but they didn't know anything either. So it was like it worked out fine. And I learned by just listening to records and playing the right hand on the side of the practice pad and the snare drum in the middle of the practice pad. And so I had a little bit of an idea, but I listened and listened and played in a bunch of bands before I ever opened a book, you know. And but then if I wanted to be a pro, so I knew I had to get my hands together, and I knew I had to learn how to read, you know. So that's when I really got into it. But at that point, then it was like, you know, um, I used the Buddy Rich book, the Rudiment book with Henry Adler and Sonny Igo, and Stick Control was always around. Um, there weren't many books on, you know, on funk, that's for sure. I mean, I wrote one of them, one of the first ones, you know. Uh, but then I, you know, got into transcribing music and how to write the drum beats and stuff like that, and I used that in my school of funk. Oh, good, thanks, Jesse. And that is how to transcribe a beat. Because I think it's important to learn how to transcribe a beat. Then you sort of set the other side of the picture. You know, if you have to listen to think out where is that bass drum? You know, is it on the of two or is it on the and of two? Then you start to get, you know, more organized and more sort of able to construct your own grooves. So I think it's sort of two sides of the picture. But your point is well taken that, you know, you can, you know, you can learn snare drum stuff and all that, but how can you learn, you know, how to play like Roy Haynes? You know, I mean, it's like you got to listen and sort of get a smattering of the idea of what he's doing, you know, and then you can maybe get some stuff happening. You know, I did study with Philly Joe Jones, and he used the book Charles Wilcoxon, Swinging Solos or something like Rudimentary Solos. This old one of my treasured items, which is around here in my library, and
Modern rudimental swing solos.
that was it. And he
Yeah.
just took me down. He said, "Now we go through this page, and it was all these rudiments and with accents and stuff, and it was hip, you know." But his thing was like, okay, there's a whole page of this stuff. He said, okay, now that's the lesson for today. Now come back when you have it memorized. And I was like, what? You know, I never memorized anything. You know, I mean, I like I did memorize some stuff. I mean, songs you have to know, but just the forms, you know. But that was a real killer because he was teaching me two things, you know. And I had heard, and you told me, John, that one time. Now, John, of course, has been playing with the Vanguard Orchestra, you know, for many years, and I would like to get into that as well. But at one point, you know, Thad Jones and Mel Lewis became the Vanguard Orchestra. You told me you had memorized the book, and I was like, how could you do that? What? Why did you do that? How long did it take? And
Well, I wasn't. I didn't have a timetable, um, but some of those are well. When I was a freshman in college, the guest artists with the college big band were Thad Jones and Mel Lewis.
oh,
Now, I
cool.
wasn't good enough to be in that band, but I observed the concert, and after they left their music in the library of North Texas, and so this was in 1972. So the early Thad Jones arrangements from up to that period became standard repertoire among the students in the big bands in that school. So a number of those things I'd been playing for 10, 15 years before I ever really played with
Ah,
the band.
I see.
Um, Now, and that was, I guess, six or eight charts.
Uh
Some
huh.
of the classics, Big Dipper, Little Pixie, Tiptoe,
Mm-hmm.
Groove Merchant, those
Mm-hmm.
charts. Um, when I started playing with the band regularly, I started subbing for Mel, I think in 87. He passed away in 90 or 91. Um, then when I started playing with the band regularly, a lot of the music some of the music I knew very well, some of it I knew peripherally. But what I
Mm-hmm.
found was that after being in the band for a couple of years, now the library is about 300 songs.
Holy crow,
After
man.
being in the band for a couple of years, I found that when I looked at the music,
Yeah.
it made me approach it in a similar way every time. And I was starting to get bored with the way I was approaching the music.
Mm-hmm.
So I just made a decision. I don't know if it was a wise one, but I took
Well.
a gamble. I said to myself, well, I think I know this music well enough to not look at the parts.
Mm-hmm.
And even if I make a mistake, uh,
Terrible. Yeah.
nothing is going to be a train wreck.
Right.
And so what happened was that was so liberating to be able to play that music without looking at it and having the
Yeah.
sight of the music um, make me play in a reflexive way. But when I put the
Right.
music away, I started playing with the sound of what I was hearing, and it kind of transformed itself from feeling like I was playing with a big band to feeling like I was playing with 15 Sonny Rollinses all at once.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
everything was like comping for that.
That's
And
great. That's
so,
great.
and I think that change that I made allowed me to bring a new kind of energy and creativity and vitality to that music that was informed by the tradition.
Yeah.
Um,
Sure.
and, you know, those songs were written with the idea of Mel Lewis playing them. And he had a beautiful concept. And my idea wasn't to take anything away from that, was to honor that, but to see
Right.
how it
Right.
could be expanded. And I'm happy that the band
Right.
had the patience and the trust in me to allow that
Mm-hmm.
process to come to fruition.
Yeah.
Now we
That's
haven't had
great.
a gig since last March,
Right. Right.
and we're gonna start up again in September at the Vanguard. We just got word of that,
Oh, cool. Yeah. All
and
right.
it'll be interesting to see what happens on the first couple of nights back. Um,
Don't think about it. It'll happen.
well, I want it to sound good.
Are you
I've
going to
been
practice
playing.
beforehand? Are you going to go through the tunes or
I don't know if I'll
listen to
go
some
through the
recordings?
tunes. I mean, I've been playing 2 or 3 hours every day during the whole
I was
break.
going to ask that too. What have you been doing during the pandemic? And what are you practicing?
Um, well, I'm practicing. Let me
Yeah.
show you.
Show.
Well, I've got this book,
Yeah.
and I write down little phrases that intrigue me
Right.
and see how I can develop them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way that I practice. And there's pages and pages of stuff. And I started this the beginning of this year.
Uh-huh.
Um, and on some pages you can see arrows like this. This one connects really nicely over here, and
Mm-hmm.
and this one, oh, it looks like it starts here, but it's even better if you make this beat one. And
Uh-huh.
so
Right. Right.
by playing these things, not every day, but almost every day, I discover a modification of some of these things or some new idea to add
Hmm.
to the collection of things that I'm
Yeah.
working on.
I have a
There's a
similar book.
couple of books. I'm sorry. There's a couple of books that I
Yeah.
have been kind of messing with.
Yeah. Which ones? Or
One is an old book by Ralph Humphrey called "Even in the Odds," which
uh-huh.
is which is all odd tempo, odd time signature stuff. but I've been changing changing it from the way it was originally written,
Mm-hmm.
adding different ostinatos to it and trying to feel the phrases in different ways.
Right,
And that's
right.
been really challenging and fun.
You know, I have a similar book over in my library. I have one each year, and it's quite a few of them over there. But I was sort of doing the same thing in a way. I come up with something that I like. For instance, between the hi hat and the snare drum, I'm trying to get these like three lefts in a row and accent that middle one. Ah, and then add the bass drum. Clyde Stubblefield had this beat, and he was doing those three in a row with the accent in the middle, which is always challenging. And it was kind of like, to see if I can say something like. And I always liked that. And of course, today you can play it. Take your right hand off and just play it. And of course, a lot of people are doing a lot of that today. I'm sort of a, more traditional with one hand on the hi hat and one, but there's all sorts of possibilities with that. And why not? Because when you're playing that you don't have to. It's like linear wise, you don't have to play the hi hat at the same time. That was how. That was Ringo. We're back to Ringo. Oh yeah. You know.
Or Charlie Watts. Or Charlie Watts.
Yeah, or Charlie Watts. So you don't have to play all like that. So, and that whole opened up the whole linear thing. Which is. Lots of stuff you can do with just one surface, which is something I love to get into and deep into that, all sorts of ways. Listening to Mike Clark and to David Garibaldi. This guy, he had a great interview just a couple of days ago on Facebook. I'll give you the link later, but anyway, of course. Garibaldi was getting the whole linear thing together, and Mike Clark too, and that was just, I think that's kind of sort of as far as funk has gotten. It's sort of, it's gone back and forth, but the linear thing is a lot of fun. So that's the kind of thing I've been working on. I different types of sort of, not exactly rudiments, but things that I like to mess with. You were talking about in your book. I don't wanted to get into this too. I was thinking, groupings of three in your book, the Art of Bop Drumming, and in my book here. And by the way, my book is available on Amazon. Your books are available on Amazon. Mine are also available on my website, which is just funkydrummer.com. Little plug here, and this is my Give the Drummer Some, which is I've had out for quite a while. Now I have. This is also available on Amazon and on my website. funkydrummer.com. In your book, you're talking about groupings of three in three beat phrases, And I wanted to get into the idea of like, well, jazz, certain three beat phrases. It's the same thing in funk, really. Like, for instance, if you're playing a beat. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1. So there's a lot of similarities. You're sort of known as a jazz drummer, and I'm sort of known as a funk drummer. But I play jazz too. But the idea that I think they're a lot more similar than people think. Because all the independence that you get playing jazz, you can do the same thing in a funk bag. And the other thing that's very interesting to me is that, with the jazz feel, you've got like triplets, one triplet, two triplets. But if you just flatten it out, instead of So you've changed the triplet feel down to the 16th note feel, and you've really done the same thing. And in fact, people say I don't know if you know Vince Laudiano, a good friend of mine from San Francisco. He says, "Well, your funk sounds, really swingy, which it does, I'm not like uh, so it's like it's a little bit halfway in between, How do you get that same feeling, or what do you have to say about that?"
Yeah, I think it comes from the spacing of the notes, but also the way you accent. There's sort of a contour to the phrasing uh, that isn't like quantized, like a
Right,
machine
right. The
would.
goddamn, excuse me, the quantization can really screw it up. It's like, I mean, we're not. Who was I? Anyway, another older drummer was talking about that. He says you work on your beat, and then but he says a metronome. He says the body doesn't work that way. He says it just doesn't. The heart has a certain thing, and you have this body motion, which is something that I work on a lot with my students. And we play to a metronome, sure, to make sure we can do it like that. But I remember Chris Parker once told me, the great drummer uh, in New York. He said, and this was after the whole disco thing and all that. He said, I don't know, go to sessions and I just can't get that damn metronome out of my ear. It's like because he had to play to this all the time. That was it. I mean, and that can be really limiting. It's a challenge because some people can play to a metronome and sound good. I mean, I don't know. They just kind of able to sort of put it in their head and still sound like a real person.
Well, Mel Lewis said an interesting thing. He did a lot of studio work in the 60s kind of and early 70s until the next generation of Gadd and those guys came in, and he played a
Right.
lot with click tracks. And he said try to think of the click track just as if it's like a percussionist. And
Hmm.
so sometimes you're exactly with the percussionist, and sometimes you guys are drifting apart. And don't get nervous when it drifts apart, but ease it back in.
Hmm.
And that sort of made the process a little less stressful.
Yeah, I like that approach.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Hey, one thing you make me think about with those three notes in the left hand.
Yeah.
If you just practice flam taps, you
So
get three notes in the left hand.
is that it? Play one for me.
Yeah, it sounds like this.
That's it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so each hand has three notes. You can hear it. Let me change this camera. Right, so it would be.
Ah. Wow, that's cool. So you
That
start with
was
the run like that.
um, I'm thinking.
Do it slow. Let me hear it. Yeah, yeah. I'm
And
learning
there's
something.
actually a South American groove. I think it might be called candomblé, which has this sort of flam taps, but starting on the upbeat instead of
Ah.
if the
Yeah.
bass drum is here, then
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you play it.
That is cool. I like that.
The hi hat plays clave,
Yeah.
and the bass
Uh-huh.
drum plays.
Uh-huh.
I haven't played this in ages.
Wow, cool. Man.
Kind of a nice groove
Nice, nice.
when it's together.
So I wanted to actually, I don't know if you remember, but I was in a group called Slickophonics. I know you remember. I'm just, um,
Absolutely.
I was in that group for 5 years, and we had 5 years of touring. And you came to one of our first gigs at a place called the Botany Talk House on Sixth Avenue in New York.
Wow. I don't remember that
That,
place.
well, it was we were just getting started, and I don't know. It seemed like you had some curiosity about funk, So, uh, and in fact, I loaned you my Meters record, which
Yeah,
you
do I still have it?
no, I got it back, but it took
Chicken
a couple of
Strut?
years,
Was
huh?
that the one, Chicken Strut?
Yeah, it had the chickens were on the front of it, like it was
Right,
like
right.
so. Then I was curious. So uh, you got into funk as well, or at some point,
Well, I think, I started out playing rock.
right? So we all started playing rock, right? So I
Right.
mean,
And
or
then I heard
blues, yeah,
Gene Krupa and and then eventually, I didn't mention this earlier, I studied with Joe Morello, and he was a
oh,
fantastic teacher that I could speak about for hours.
yes, yes,
But and at the same time I was studying with Joe Morello, I was actually introduced to Mahavishnu Orchestra and Billy
wow,
Cobham and this sort of fusion thing.
right,
And
right,
then somebody introduced me to Tower of Power.
I see.
And
Okay,
so I kind of learned about funk from Garibaldi rather than from Purdy
uh-huh,
and Earl Palmer and those guys.
okay,
Um, so everybody, I guess, unless you're Louis Armstrong, who kind of heard the evolution of music, everybody starts someplace, and people look back to a certain degree or to a great degree. And so my introduction to funk was kind of through Garibaldi, and then
right,
checking out Greg Arico
right, right.
and Michael Shreve,
All those
and
guys from
then
California, yeah.
Purdy, and what
Right.
was that other guy's name? Gaylord Birch was a
Right.
great
He
drummer.
was a bad dude, man. Yeah, he's gone now, I think. But yeah, he was great. So yeah, we all kind of jump in along you know, the path of it and go from there, or go back from there and then come back up to it. Um, uh, Let me see. First of all, before I wanted to just give a shout out to my sponsors who have helped me for many years. Peisty Cymbals, DW Drums, a great drum set, um, and Vader Sticks and Remo. Of course, everybody's got Remo heads. They got us head for every possibility. So those guys, thank you very much. You've really you know supported me over the years, and I do appreciate that. Um,
Well, maybe I should say the same thing for
well, go
Yamahas,
ahead. Yeah, go ahead if you.
Remo.
We're gonna send it
Um,
to them. Yeah.
Great, yeah, they provide instruments that really draw me to want to play them, and that's what
Hmm.
I'm looking for. And that there's something to that. If you like the way your instrument sounds, well, let me put it the other way. If you don't like the way your instrument sounds, you're less likely to practice. But if you love the way it sounds and then it's calling you to come play me, Um, so you want to have an instrument that you're happy with, and for me, this Yamaha drums, Zildjian cymbals with Remo heads that really they work in every kind of situation. So I'm very happy to that they support the things that I do.
That's great. That's great. So, uh, one thing I wanted to think about and get into a little bit. So we got this idea of why do you know you want to be a professional drummer. So you have to have, first of all, you have to have that passion, like you were saying, that this is the only thing that's really going to make you happy, and you're going to have to, you know, get into it, go through some hard times. I know. I just heard. Where was that? I heard somebody was saying. Oh, it was Garibaldi who was saying interview he did with this guy Mike Doolbear just last week that we think it's difficult now to make it as a musician, but he says that it's always the same. Like for instance, in the Renaissance, way back in art, Rubens and all these people, they had just as hard a time getting their thing together as we have getting our thing together. So you don't want to think, oh man, the times are bad, it's not going to work out. You've got to go for it. And that's number one. And number two, as we've laid out, I think you've got to study. You got to study and get the technique that you want. And then the last part of it, not I don't know if the last part, but you got to get a gig. So a lot of people, they're playing in their basement, and the old saying was, they're waiting for Miles to call them up, or they think somebody's going to go by the street and hear them play and hire them. So that's not it. You got to get out there. And now that the pandemic is over, you can get out there more, and of course you can get out there online, which everybody's doing all the time now. So you've got to be proactive and you got to find people that are in your bag. Now, when we did the Slickophonics, there was a jam session up near Times Square where I was living. Every Monday night there was a jam session. Patience Higgins was doing it, and I went there every Monday night, and I met a ton of people, and eventually they kind of filtered down to, Ray Anderson, Steve Elson, Al Jaffe, and Mark Elias, and we just kind of, we knew sort of. Then I didn't know Al, and they said, "Well, let's get Al in the group," and blah blah, and it clicked, So, and that's how it worked, So, but you got to be out there, and you've got to go to jam sessions, go to everyone you can. That was Will Lee told me that. When I first came to New York, it was like, how are you going to do this? Just go to every jam session you possibly can, and hold them in your own place, whatever. So, you might not click with every person, even though you're on a similar level, but eventually you'll find a group that works together, and then you'll be, you'll be happening. Now, I'm showing my house here. Actually, we're going to sell a house, and somebody's here to look at it. They can just come in and look if they want,
I'll take it.
John's going to take it. Okay. Yeah, so I don't know. Anyway, lots going on here. um, so I was trying to put together sort of somewhat of a program for younger people who want to sort of get into the business sort of a thing, follow that passion. I don't know, John, do you have any other pointers on how that's done?
Well, maybe the times have changed a little bit, but I got some advice when I was young, and this older musician named Marvin Stamm,
Mm-hmm.
trumpet player, played on a million record dates in New York. He said to me, if you focus on the
Tell
music,
them they can come in if they want, just to look. Go ahead, John. I want to
he
receive
said,
my studio.
if you focus on the music, the business side of it will take care of itself. He said, if
Uh-huh.
you focus on the business, all you'll get is the business.
Wow, that's great. That's
And
great.
yeah, what can I control? I can control if I practice today or not. I
Yeah,
can
right.
control I can control if that band leader says, your bossa nova sounds a little funny to me. Well, I can control whether I work on that or not.
Right, right.
These are the things I can control. And then to follow up on what you were saying, you want to be visible enough so that you have the possibility to meet people that you find some kind of sympathetic musical vibes with.
Right.
And there's a
Right.
million really strong players that don't necessarily feel comfortable with each other. And then there's little groups that seem to keep forming because they enjoy playing together. And you
Right.
want to
Right.
find the people that, this is going to sound, really new agey, but you want to find the people that you're meant to play with, and
No,
that takes
I
time.
I agree with that. You're on a mission, and that it'll happen. It will happen. It just organically, you know.
And you want to find a door that opens for you, because it's not just about playing great. It's about being prepared at the right time, having the right people aware of your competency,
Hmm.
and gaining their trust somehow. That's really, since we're such a support
Hmm.
instrument, we want the other players to trust us, and
Right.
to
Right.
trust our sense of groove, to trust our musical instincts, to trust our sense of dynamics, to trust the leadership component that we bring to the music, and to trust that we're reliable, that we're going to be on the gig on time with the right clothes on and all of those
Right.
basic things.
Right. All that
Um,
too.
yeah,
Uh,
and if you want to play, you have to take all these other things into account. It's not just about being a little faster than Buddy Rich. Yeah,
right.
anyway, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, okay. I have two things. One right on that was, Sonny Igo, who I studied with, Tommy Igo's dad. Um, he was like a Buddy Ray. He was super fast, and he played on all these TV shows in New York on staff, CBS and NBC. An amazing, amazing drummer. And one of his mantras was practice slow to play fast. And it's like that is it, man. It's like, I mean, I you gotta when you're playing funk, you gotta have that bass drum, right? And so to practice that, relax, relax, relax. I mean, and the same with the hands. That's you don't get to that. You go like, you know. So that's the first thing, and the second thing that you brought to mind was the great drummer Roger Hawkins just passed away about 2 days ago, who played on a bunch of Aretha Franklin tunes and all sorts of stuff down at the Fame Studios in Sheffield, Alabama. And I went down there and met him and interviewed him for my book, which is Give the Drummer Some. He's in here along with, you know, 25 other drummers of that, hit makers and stuff. Um, and he, in a great obituary for him in the New York Times, but he said, in terms of drummers, what advice could I give was, a lot of drummers think that when there's a space in the music, it's time to play really fast and show off. And his thing was, if I could teach drummers anything, it would be to listen to listen to the music. That was the most important thing. And they he didn't read music. None of those guys did, from what I hear. And that same thing in Stax. And I went down to Stax and talked to those guys, and uh, you know Steve Cropper said, we have head arrangements. And well, what's that? He said, we just play it and learn it. We just figure it out. And I've done a lot of that too. And I think that's, in terms of funk and R&B, that's kind of the best way to do it in a way. Just to get together and get a groove and then add to it. That's what we did with the JB horns. I mean, we would get a groove, and before you know it, they had a horn line that went with it, and somebody said, well, let's go to this chord, and then there's a break, and you have a tune. But he did a lot. Roger Hawkins, played on so many hits, and I was lucky to hang out with him for one afternoon, and we went to a car dealership. He wanted to check. He had ordered wide white wall tires for his Buick Riviera, and he wanted to make sure that they had come in. I always treasure that afternoon memory. But yeah, so what we're talking about is, not so, like you were saying, John. It's like there's a lot of factors if you want to get into it, and you named them really right on there. First of all, you got to be prepared. You got to be prepared for the gig you're going to. You got to show up on time, and you got to show up an hour early. If you're the drummer, you got to set up, and you got to look good, and you got to be amenable and have fun to play with. Fun to hang with, and take care of business. Whatever. When you find out you need to do something, well, like I found out, I didn't know how to read very well. I went, and I was scuffling through the tune, and it was like, wait a minute, I better. And so I did. I spent several years learning how to do it. So when you find something you need to do, you got to do that. Get it ready so you're complete. You can play any kind of gig. Now some gigs, when you start out, you're playing rock and roll gigs, or you're playing whatever, weddings, whatever it is. You're making money. You got to do some of that, until you can get into a group that you like, and you guys go on and then go for it, make some original music. So it's a whole kind of a process, but follow the dream, and do it. I mean, that's it. Don't give up.
Yeah, I played a million weddings and bar mitzvahs, and some of them were dreadful, and others I met somebody that I really connected with
Right.
musically and personally. So you never know who's going to be on the bandstand or who's going to be in the audience, and that's why you want to be prepared. You want to play with the right attitude, with the right energy, um, because opportunities don't come around that often, and you may be in a situation where Quincy Jones happens to be in the audience,
Yeah.
and if you sound tired, well, he's not going to come and talk to you. Um,
Right. Right.
so that's it. You want to, like, we're the engine of the band. We need to bring vitality to the music,
Right.
um,
Right.
and we need to lift everybody else up. And
That's it. That's it.
that's the energy. It's not chaotic. It's not a panic, but it's the sort of forward momentum we need to put into the music to make it feel like it must be,
Yeah.
right? When it sounds tired, then it's a problem for the other musicians. It's a problem for the listeners, and it doesn't lead to good opportunities.
Right. Right.
One
It's
one other thing you mentioned about practicing slowly, I remember Joe Morello was a student of George Lawrence Stone.
It's stick
And George
control.
Lawrence Stone, the guy who wrote Stick Control, he created this thing he called Stone's formula.
Hmm.
And Stone's formula was accuracy plus endurance equals speed.
Ah.
As simple as that.
Accuracy. Yeah. Really know what you're doing. Yeah. I mean, I've been playing, warming up, getting stuff, rudiments and all that happen, and I realize I'm not really, you know, thinking about my fingers are making the sound. It's not the end of the stick. Once you get that idea, dynamics are a lot may make more sense. Like uh, John Ramsey taught me that in one lesson at a PASIC thing. I said, "Well, what happens when you get really soft?" He said, "Well, you've got to actually hold on a little bit tighter." But it got me going thinking about my grip and how I was always thinking the end of the stick is doing the work. But
Hmm.
it's your fingers that are doing the work. And the
Well, the
closer
fingers
you
are
can
doing
get,
the work, but it's the ears that are directing the fingers.
right, that's right. You got to hear it. It's got to make the sound that you want it to make.
Right.
But well, I think we've covered a lot of stuff, and I think well, I've had a great time, and I think we can wrap it up here, and who knows, maybe we could do another one.
Well, it's great to
But
see you, Jim, and to see that you're um, helping young drummers and old drummers become more aware of what's important. So thank you
uh,
for continuing on that mission. Hey, I was thinking
okay.
earlier about a tagline for your drum lessons.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, maybe somebody mentioned this to you 50 years ago, but it could be no pain, no gain.
All right, all right. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that. Just put my name in there. Why not? I mean, I've been
That's it.
working really hard with my School of Funk, and that's coming along really well. It's all done. It's just in my. If you go to my website, funkydrummer.com, you can find out all about it. So, John, if somebody wants to, get in touch with you or study with you, are you open to them? How would they do that? I mean,
Shoot me an email at john@johnriley.org. And
okay.
I've been giving Zoom lessons to, I have some students in China, some students in
Yeah, I do
Israel,
too. Amazing. Yeah,
some
go ahead.
students in South America, in Italy. And it works well either via Zoom or FaceTime or
Right.
Skype. All those formats work pretty well.
All right. So John
Yeah.
at johnrileymusic.com. No.
John@johnriley.org.
Okay. John at johnriley.org.
Yeah,
Okay.
johnriley.com is a gourmet pet food maker.
Oh my God.
And johnriley.org is that'll get you to me.
Okay. Very good. Great. Now we
Thank
have
you,
a
Jim.
few people came on. I just want to say hi to Ken Murphy, my buddy out there. Um, what does he say? Would like to hear what John thought about Jim Chapin's interrupting his PASIC clinic. Not sure what year, but Jim actually got up and played. I'm not quite
That's
sure what
true. I
that's
did
all
a
about.
clinic at PASIC, and Jim was in the audience, as he often was, in the front row, checking everybody out.
Yeah.
Super supportive man, and incredibly enthusiastic about drumming and about helping other drummers play better. And I was talking about a particular subject, and he presented a slightly different way to think about it that opened my ears up, and I think was a nice addition to the workshop.
Uh
It was a little bit strange for him to be so aggressive.
huh.
I mean, not aggressive in a bad way, but so forward. But I was happy for his input.
That's
And
great.
Jim was always so enthusiastic and
He was
so helpful.
amazingly enthusiastic. He couldn't stop playing, man. He was like, he's sitting with the pad he's just in in somebody's booth and just he was amazing.
He was a good guy.
I got a little shout out from my buddy Emil Switzer in New York, who was you know a district leader in my Buddhist group. Uh, we practice SGI Buddhism. We chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and Emil was with me the whole way. He really supported me when I had some health problems, and just want to say thank you, Emil. Good to see you're there. So, okay, let's wrap it up, and maybe we'll do it again, John. I really this was fun.
I'd be happy to do that. Thank you, Jim.
Okay,
Take care, everybody.
okay. Adios, amigos. Just end broadcast. Okay.